Hi, today we'll be changing the right brake lever on the pedal electric core model. These are the same brakes that are on the older Pro and all-wheel drive 2 models. However, some of the other controls we'll be removing today are a little different. These same steps can also be used for the left brake lever, but again, you'll be removing and reinstalling different controls in those situations. The all-wheel drive 3, though, has a different brand of brakes, but again, these steps are about the same. Though I'm not wearing gloves in this video, I would recommend it. Or at least wash your hands thoroughly before touching your eyes or food. You'll need a 5, 4, and 3 millimeter Allen wrench, an 8 millimeter crescent wrench, and a hammer. You may also need a 10 millimeter crescent wrench to remove the plastic plug on the new brake lever, but when that sometimes still doesn't work, you may also need a pair of pliers to loosen it. You'll see what I'm talking about when we get to that step. Okay, so to get started, we're going to want to unwrap the cables and brake line to free them from each other and expose any cable connectors we'll be needing to unplug. Next, you want to locate the brake sensor cable that comes out of the brake lever right below the brake line. Follow that down to its connector and disconnect it. When you've got that unplugged, go ahead and grab your 8 millimeter crescent wrench to remove the brake line. The fitting for the brake line is located under a plastic protector sleeve, which you can pull out and slide down the brake line to get it out of the way. These hydraulic brake lines use mineral oil, which can leak out a little during this process, so it's a good idea to have a rag handy. We'll need to remove the grip and throttle before we can slide off the brake lever, so we'll need to disconnect the throttle cable as well. It comes out of the front of the throttle right underneath the brake lever. Once everything is disconnected, we can go ahead and remove the controls. For the grip, you want to use a 4 millimeter Allen wrench to loosen the bolt on the end only a few turns, leaving the head of the bolt sticking out about 1/4 of an inch, or 5 millimeters if you think in metric. This bolt is attached to a tapered plug which it forces into an expandable sleeve inside the handlebars, so if you take the screw out all the way, you'll end up leaving it stuck inside. Once you get the head of the bolt sticking out, you just tap the end of it with a hammer and the grip should loosen right up. After sliding off the grip, you'll need to also remove the plastic sleeve tucked inside the throttle. Next, we'll use a 3 millimeter Allen wrench to loosen the clamp on the throttle and slide that off as well. Now we can remove the old brake lever by loosening the clamp with a 5 millimeter Allen wrench and slide it off the handlebar. The new brake lever should come with a plastic plug in the port for the brake line. This might be easier to remove once the lever is installed on the bars, but for this video I'm removing it first so you can clearly see what I'm doing. The plug is made to be removed with a 10 millimeter crescent wrench. However, since it's made of plastic, sometimes the plug is a bit stubborn and hard to grip with a correctly sized wrench. This is where the pliers can be helpful just to loosen it up. Once loose, you can finish it off with a 10 millimeter crescent wrench, but once it's loose enough, your fingers will work just fine. That plug is meant to keep mineral oil in the reservoir of the brake lever, so don't squeeze the handle until you have the brake line attached. Once the new brake lever is slid into place and clamped down, it's time to reinstall the throttle. You'll want to position it at a low enough angle so the cable doesn't interfere with the brake lever. Again, do not squeeze the brake lever before attaching the brake line, or else this will happen. If it does get squeezed though, we have another video about topping off the brake line, which we'll be happy to share with you. I'm just doing it here to demonstrate why the cable should be positioned out of the way. Once you've clapped the throttle in place, you'll reinstall the plastic sleeve, followed by the grip. It's not super important, but I like to line up the grip pattern of the rubber with the pattern on the throttle just so it looks a little cleaner. When that's tightened in place, it's time to move on to reconnecting the brake line. You'll want to slide the threaded collar up to the metal end called an olive and insert it in the port. Make sure not to cross thread the fitting. I'm inserting a rag here because if you have leaking fluid, it starts to get a little messy. You should be able to do it mostly by hand, but you want to finish it off with an 8 millimeter wrench. The seal is created by the olive being compressed into the end of the port by the fitting, so make sure it's good and tight. After giving the brake lever a quick test, you're ready to reconnect the cable connectors. The connectors have a little tab on the inside that corresponds with the groove on the other end. You'll want to line those up when connecting them, but on the other side of the connector, there's also a set of arrows that are meant to be lined up to ensure you're connecting it correctly. Whichever visual aid works best for you is fine, and the same rules apply for both the throttle cable and the brake sensor cable. Next, we slide the plastic hose protector down onto the fitting, and we're ready to rewrap the cables and brake line. You may need to adjust the cables slightly as you go to make sure the cables and hose aren't being pulled on by being wrapped together. Once we finish wrapping the cables, we briefly test out the lever and give ourselves a thumbs up for a job well done.